Good evening and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland and Scotland at 7 here live from Glasgow. I'm Scott Bevan. I am here with regular contributor Chris McCusker. Hello, Chris.
Good evening, Scott. How are we this evening?
Yeah, not too bad. We are joined in the studio by Chris today. Usually it's remotely.
I would actually, tonight of all nights, I would have preferred it being remotely. It's still 30 degrees outside, so it's absolutely boiling in the studio, but nonetheless, happy to be here.
It is indeed. I've lost my jacket, so we've been doing it all week. First then for the coronavirus update. As of 2 p.m. today, a total of 2,406,218 people in Scotland have been tested through NHS Scotland labs and UK government regional testing centres since the start of the pandemic. Of these, 2,072,077 have been confirmed negative. 334,141 have tested positive. There are 1,686 new cases of COVID-19 confirmed by a test. Although not everyone with the virus will display symptoms and not all those with symptoms will be tested. There are 7 new reported deaths of people who have tested positive. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus infection now stands at 7,820. This number only includes those who have died having received a positive test for the virus in the previous 28 days. Of the people who have tested positive, 529 were in hospital last night, 51 of whom were in intensive care. As of 8 a.m. this morning, 3,987,074 people had received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination, and 3,010,505 had received their second dose. The latest UK daily figures show 128,896 patients who tested positive from COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, an increase of 73 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings, not just hospitals. The NRS update then, as of the 18th of July, 10,268 deaths have been registered in Scotland, while the novel coronavirus COVID-19 was mentioned on the death certificate, according to statistics published by the National Records of Scotland today. In the week from the 12th to the 18th of July, 47 deaths were registered that mentioned COVID-19 on the death certificate, an increase of 16 deaths from the previous week. There were 11 deaths in Glasgow City, 6 deaths in the city of Edinburgh, and 5 deaths in Dundee City. In total, 19 council areas had at least 1 death last week. 1,125 deaths were registered in total in Scotland in the week of the 28th. This was 100 or 10% more deaths than the 5-year average for week 28. Our top story this evening then. UK government's threat to renegotiate the Northern Ireland Protocol has been described as extremely concerning. Following the UK government's publication of a new position paper on the Northern Ireland Protocol, External Affairs Secretary Angus Robertson said that the entire issue, which could have significant implications for trade and business in Scotland, is a problem of the UK government's own making because of their pursuit of a damaging hard Brexit. Mr. Robertson said in a statement, by pursuing that hard Brexit and refusing to align food standards with the EU, Scottish businesses are again being pitched into a period of huge uncertainty and a potential trade crisis, just as the economy starts to recover from the pandemic. The UK government is effectively gambling with our EU trade by trying to renegotiate a deal agreed by both sides and hailed by the Prime Minister at the time as oven ready. It is a shambolic situation and one that is totally unnecessary and self-inflicted. He said, we are very concerned that the existing tension between the UK government and the EU can only be further intensified over this crucial issue in the coming weeks, and that today's statement will further erode trust. Scotland did not vote for Brexit, and as with the Brexit deal itself, Scotland's voice has not been heard or acted upon by the UK government. Angus Robertson said, we were notified of this significant change in position by the UK government at short notice and with no consultation, which once again lays bare their attitude towards the devolved governments. We urge the UK government to proceed in a spirit of collaboration, not conflict, with the EU over this crucial issue. Do you think that they will, Chris?
In a word, no. I mean, Angus Robertson's quite right to call them out. This is the second time in a week that they've tried to double down on the agreement that they actually wrote. To quote Ernie Wise, that's a period joke. You won't get that. But
I know who you mean.
but yeah, they have said that the deal was oven ready. Way back, at the beginning of last year, and yet there's still no deal that is going to satisfy, every constituent partner within the UK Union. Quite clearly they have got no respect for Scotland, they've got no respect for Wales, and they've got scant regard for Northern Ireland. Because at the end of the day, they're trying to juggle all the balls at the one time. Where you've got the DUP basically wanting them to take away the border in the Irish Sea, and what their end game is, nobody knows, apart from the fact that their blinkered love of union. But it is something that has been agreed, and to backtrack on it now is quite simply crass. But it's endemic of this government, which clearly lacks in clarity and leadership.
Going back a year or two ago then, assuming that Brexit was inevitable, many would argue that it wasn't, but assuming 2 years ago Brexit was inevitable, what could have been done differently to avoid this, and what should they have done to stop tensions increasing in Northern Ireland?
Well, in regard to Northern Ireland, they should have respected the vote, which the vast majority of Northern Ireland wanted to stay within the EU, and that should have been reciprocated to Scotland as well. Brexit was an English-driven agenda, and many people signed up to a pack of lies, which was half of it, maybe even not half of it, was unfolded last night in the Cummings interview with Laura Kuenssberg. But that would have been the best way to do it. Would have been to respect the country's wishes, and let that country deal with whatever the constituents of that country wanted. And if England and Wales wanted to pursue Brexit, then they were quite they could go off and do it, and let the Scotland and Northern Ireland deal with the EU on an equal footing, shall we say.
Would there have been any realistic situation whereby Scotland and Northern Ireland could have remained within the EU while England and Wales left and still maintained a united kingdom? Is that something that could have ever happened?
Where there's a political will, I think there is a way to do it. Things, and if this might be unpopular to an awful lot of independent voting viewers, but that independence itself would bring up many contortions of intertwined trade with the likes of England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, as well as the EU. So it could have worked. Because I mean, quite clearly, Northern Ireland were dealing with Southern Ireland for years before Brexit. So there is a mechanism there that could have been, enhanced, somewhat. Now, all it is, it's come down to sausage wars, and it's quite frankly, it's completely ridiculous, because the more they try and change things, the more it seems, to quote Ian Blackford, a complete bourach.
Yeah, the Conservative government stood on a platform of getting Brexit done. That was their tagline. That was, many people would say, why they were elected. And they're claiming, of course, that Brexit is done, but is it?
No, no, no. Brexit's not done, and Brexit will not be done for at least, I would envisage, for at least 10 years now. Because the ramifications out of Brexit, quite clearly it has been borne out through fact that many of the negotiating ministers simply didn't read the fine print of what they were signing off. I mean, this one point in question is what I said earlier on about sausage wars. They didn't read the fine print that it would affect mincemeat.
Mm.
And then mincemeat obviously, goes into sausages, goes into sausage rolls, goes into all sorts of different foodstuffs, and they didn't actually see what was coming down the line. They just ticked, yeah, we agree to all that, because quite simply they did want Brexit done, and they wanted it done by, X date, although the dates were, shifted, because they couldn't complete it. But at the end of the day, I personally think that it will, we will be reaping the aftermath of Brexit for the next 10 years. Unless obviously Scotland becomes independent.
Let's say Scotland does become independent within the next few years, then what is the route for Scotland back into the European Union?
I am led to believe that the route is very, very simple. We already tick all the major factors of the European Union acquis. Scotland and all Scotland's MPs and MSPs are adamant that they will not be dropping any of our standards. With regards food and with regards safety and stuff like that. The things that we are not competent in is the areas that are reserved to Westminster. So therefore the likes of, just for argument's sake, the Working Time Directive, we've got no say over that whatsoever, because it's all central by Whitehall.
Yeah.
And unless those areas get devolved to Scotland pretty quick, then we would need to be playing catch up.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. Calls have been made for action to tackle Brexit labour shortages. Employment Minister Richard Lochhead has pressed the UK government to urgently rethink post-Brexit immigration policy as part of efforts to address ongoing labour shortages. In a letter to Skills Minister Gillian Keegan, Mr Lochhead urges the UK government to use its reserved powers to prevent severe skills shortages from hampering our recovery from the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. He also calls for meaningful engagement with the Scottish Government in forming the skills shortages list. The call to action comes amidst ongoing labour shortages affecting many sectors, including HGV drivers, due to the impact of Brexit and the pandemic. Chris, we spoke the last time you were on this show about the impact on HGV drivers, didn't we? Is this affecting Scotland in a different way than it is affecting the rest of the UK?
No. It's affecting the whole of the UK, because of the fact that the pernicious pursuits of Priti Patel, and creating a hostile environment where, I would probably guesstimate that at least 30% of the haulage drivers in Britain last year were EU nationals, and the fact that they have that we are now seeing a shortage in that sector actually highlights the fact that Scotland again needs its immigration devolved to us, so that we have the say in who we actually want to come and live here and contribute to our society. There are people out there. Conversely, there are people out there who do not want to get behind the wheel of a truck and drive from Britain to Europe. But there are people that want to do that, and we should be welcoming them then and saying, come and help our supply chain because we need you. It is a complete no-brainer to me.
Would devolving immigration solve this issue then, do you think?
I personally think that it would solve this issue in the long term. But the other issues as well, particularly with COVID-19, that the fact that the pandemic has put back an awful lot of HGV tests, for argument's sake. And there's now a kind of I think I heard that there was an 8-week wait or something like that, just to actually register for an actual test. There is talk about, a lot of haulage companies now bringing their training in-house. The way it used to be was that you signed a contract with a company if you were lucky enough to get the job, and you would sign the contract to say that you would stay for, the likes of 2 years or 3 years so that they could recoup what they've paid out in order to train you to drive their trucks. And then you were free to sort of move to another company and stuff like that. It's very much the same as what the buses do when they're hiring PSV trainees, is the fact that you're locked into a contract and you've got to serve a limited amount of time with them.
What happens if you break the contract?
If you break the contract, you have to pay.
Yeah.
And I can see, I mean, there are sort of pros and cons to that. But at the end of the day, it's directly helping that sector at that moment in time.
We've got a lot of skill shortages then, it would appear. Is the UK government now more aware of this perhaps than they were, and do you think that they might do something about it? They might listen to what Angus Robertson said?
I personally don't think that they will do anything about it. Whether or not they are actually cognizant of the fact that this is yet another ongoing factor due to Brexit. I seriously don't think that they have taken everything in the round. As I say, I personally think that they just ticked a lot of boxes, when they were in the EU negotiations and said, yeah, we're okay with that, without actually reading the fine print. And this episode, with regards to the HGV drivers, obviously nobody had the foresight to, read further to find out that this would impact. Again, the other thing that I would really like to make the point is that if immigration was devolved to Scotland, there are so many asylum seekers in Scotland that are not allowed to work. Scottish government can change that overnight. Do you know what I mean? And we could allow them to work because from a personal experience, my humanitarian hat on, people want to give in to society. They want to have something to do. And just giving them travel cards and phone cards and and £15 a week is not contributing to the actual communities and society as a whole. So therefore, if they had a purpose, if they had a job, it's a win-win situation for everyone.
Yeah, fair enough. So, immigration policy, in your opinion, immigration policy and devolution over work policies, employment policies should be devolved.
Employment law, all the rest of it, everything that the trade union movement would, readily sign up to. Earlier on, I mentioned about the working time directive and stuff like that. These are things that have been, that have had a coach and horses trampled right the way through it. The trade union bill a couple of years ago, the Tories just ripped it asunder.
Yeah.
Now workers have got less rights than what they've ever had, and the trade union movement worked long and hard in order to build up those rights in conjunction with the EU, because those rights are reciprocated in Europe.
If they devolved immigration and employment law, then and perhaps other things like broadcasting, for instance, if these things were devolved, and we had a Devo Max kind of situation. Do you think that would diminish the desire for Scottish independence?
No, I don't think so, because many people, obviously myself included, believe that Scotland should be able to function as its own individual entity, and we should be able to decide whether we want to join the EU or whether we want to join EFTA or something like that. That's down to the Scottish people. And they should be the ones to actually, decide that. But whilst Westminster are constantly denying us the right to have independence, we've seen stories earlier on in the week here where the whole thing about Michael Gove and the whole suppression of his department spending COVID money on polling and stuff like that, with regards, people's feelings about the union and stuff like that. They're on the ropes, and independence is coming, whether they like it or not. But what's the bigger elephant in the room is the actual union itself. Because, even Mark Drakeford has went on record to say that the union quite clearly is not working for Wales. And then, we go back to the first story tonight about Northern Ireland. Quite clearly, the union isn't working for Northern Ireland as well. So it's not, although independence is central, to everybody's goal that watches, obviously, this channel and campaigns for independence, it's not the be-all and end-all. It's obviously it's the start of a new beginning, yes. But, I think everybody has to be realistic enough to realise that it's, it won't immediately deliver a land of milk and honey.
Just like to point out that it's not necessarily the case that everyone who watches broadcasts in Scotland is going to be pro-independence.
I think they're kind of like, wavering.
Ian Blackford then says Boris Johnson and Scottish Tory MPs must come clean over jobs for votes reports. The SNP's Westminster leader has challenged Boris Johnson to categorically deny that Scottish Tory votes to slash the aid budget for the world's poorest were bought off with the promise of government jobs. In a letter to the Prime Minister, Ian Blackford cited remarks made by senior Tory MP Damien Green that jobs were dangled in front of Tory backbenchers to prevent them voting against these crucial cuts to aid. It comes after the UK government faced a significant rebellion in the House of Commons on the vote, despite an explicit Tory manifesto commitment to maintain the 0.7% spend on overseas aid. Douglas Ross and the Scottish Tory MPs all fell in behind Boris Johnson and voted in favour of the multi-billion-pound cut. Blackford also called out Johnson for attempting to shut out the majority voice of Scotland's democratic representatives in Westminster by failing to follow proper procedures and informing the SNP of his decision to speak in the aid debate. The MP warned it was obvious this was solely and deliberately directed at the SNP, given the Labour leader had been fully informed the previous evening. This comes back to what you were saying a few minutes ago about Scotland being ignored by Westminster, perhaps, doesn't it?
Yeah. Can I point out to the viewers who are watching, I have not pre-read the script tonight, so this really just backs up exactly what I was saying earlier on, is the fact that they have got so much disdain and so a lack of regard for Scotland that they don't even talk to Ian Blackford on important situations such as this. I watched PMQs today, and it still flabbergasts me even now. And this is not directly just about the SNP, but there is a protocol to follow. So it's obviously the opposition leader gets to ask a question of the Prime Minister, or several questions, and then the natural progression is the next biggest party, then the next biggest party, and then the next biggest party. Yeah. But they always shoehorn an MP in between Keir Starmer and Ian Blackford. that to me is a complete slap in the face. Maybe it's one that Broadcasting Scotland can ask Ian Blackford as to why they get away with breaking that kind of like protocol. I don't understand. But I mean, even when you look at the Lib Dems, they're usually way down the pecking order. Green Party obviously. Caroline Lucas as 9 times out of 10, it's every other week she gets to ask a question. It's not every week. And the floor was given over to the new leader of the DUP today for him to ask his first question. Boris Johnson congratulating him and all the rest of it. So there is that clear. It's anybody just needs to troll back through the newspapers back to 2014, and they can quite clearly see that Westminster has got absolutely no regard. Not just for Scotland as well, but they've also got very scant regard for Wales and for Northern Ireland as well.
Do these procedural things matter an awful lot, though? Do they?
Well, I mean, my own personal point of view is the fact that none of our MPs should be there. We should be doing a Sinn Féin. And I've had a few heated discussions with a couple of MPs as to why I personally don't think that they should be there. And an awful lot of people would back me up on that claim. Because quite clearly, every time that the SNP propose something, it always gets rejected, and there's never any consensus. Within that house, and it's simply just down to grievance more than anything. I mean, even 9 times out of 10, well, maybe not 9 times out of 10, there was a couple of really good trade union issues that Chris Stevens has brought to the floor, and we've failed to garner any support from the Labour Party whatsoever, and that's supposed to be the party that represents working people. And when you can see that, the fact that there's no unity on the opposition benches, then you tend to think, well, what's the point?
Well, continuing to provide overseas aid, 0.7% of GDP on overseas aid, was in the Tory manifesto, wasn't it? And they have backed out on that. It's not the first proposal in their manifesto that they backed out on, and the things that they have pushed through so far, most of them haven't been in their manifesto. So what's the point in a manifesto? It's not just the Tories who do it. Labour did it. The SNP at times have done it too.
Yeah.
What's the point in a manifesto if it just gets ignored as soon as they get into power?
I personally believe that manifestos these days are not worth the paper they're written on. As in, I'm harking back to the likes of the 70s and the 80s and stuff like that, where, that you could see that quite clearly a party's agenda, and it was actually pretty much ruled by their direction of travel. Their ultimate goals. It's maybe not something that is automatically attainable when they get elected, but it's something that they obviously would pursue. And if you look at the SNP manifestos, periodically going back maybe to 2012 and all the rest of it, or even further than that, independence has always been at the forefront of it.
Yeah.
But then obviously the devolution of all the powers necessary in order to make Scotland a normal operating country. And that's obviously a dream. Well, maybe not a dream, but it's obviously an agenda that has been closely pursued as well by the Scottish Green Party as well. And long may we continue to find common consensus in that. But when you've got 3 unionist parties who are diametrically opposed to anything that the Scottish National Party would suggest, and even many times I've noticed that some sensible proposals coming out from the Greens, as they are hijacked by the unionist parties out of sheer grievance. Even although the fact that some of these policies could make sense, they are just hijacked out of grievance. So, but going back to the overseas aid is the fact that, I firmly believe that the UK Labour, the UK Conservative Party could have written their manifesto on the back of a fag packet and still got elected. Because at the end of the day, the people who were voting for the Tory party were not voting for the Tory party per se. They were voting to get Brexit done.
Yeah. Fair enough. MP Marion Fellows says that the UK government betrays sick and disabled people again and again. The SNP's disability spokesperson has described the UK government's health and disability green paper as long overdue, but still lacking real ambition to support those with disabilities and long-term illnesses. Marion Fellows MP has said that the Green Paper fails to address key issues affecting disabled people in the UK, the social security system, including benefit sanctions, the payment cap within access to work, and accessibility of its Kickstart scheme, all of which the SNP has long called for. After putting disabled claimants through years of degrading assessments, the UK government should use this opportunity to follow the Scottish government's lead by moving away from face-to-face assessments and taking a person-centred approach, she said. The paper also fails to acknowledge the higher costs that disabled people have faced during the pandemic and makes no mention exploring the widespread calls from the SNP and organisations to make the £20 universal credit uplift permanent and extend it to legacy benefits. I think we talked about the £20 uplift the last time you were here as well. But the SNP now highlighting that even when the Conservatives are producing a report saying this is how we're going to help disabled people, it doesn't particularly help disabled people.
No, and again, this goes back to my earlier rant about the fact that, when the SNP come out with really good, sensible policies such as this, because Marion Fellows has been an absolute stalwart for disabled rights. Again, we don't garner any consensus within the House of Commons chamber, because when this comes to being voted on, sadly, I don't have much hope that it will get carried through. There was evidence today in PMQs as well. One of the Labour MPs was asking about the £20 uplift to be continued, and Boris Johnson went on a complete waffle about jobs, and jabs, and the rollout and whatnot and what have you, and he answered the question by not answering it, because they have no desire to extend the £20 uplift. This MP directly asked Boris Johnson if he could survive on £96 a week, and again he failed to answer that. So again, it's wonderful work from Marion, but I just don't see it gaining much traction.
It's taking away face-to-face assessments though because of the pandemic. Is that the reason they're doing it?
It's I would probably say one of the reasons. It's not.
What would the other ones be?
Well, from a personal point of view, again, I'm a carer for my elder brother, who's actually had a one-to-one assessment in his house without me being present. Which was very, very naughty of them. Because it was later challenged on, and I managed to get all his benefits reinstated. But the approach that the Scottish government are taking towards the disabled community is very much on an individual basis. Whereas the DWP is basically just looking at this as a one-size-fits-all exercise. Whereas, people are individuals and people have got individual needs, and, that individual need may not be, complementary to someone else. And if they've got, just say for argument's sake, 6 or 8 assessments to do in the one day, then I can see why it's easy just to have a checklist, and go down. But that's not person-based. that's figure based. And what the Scottish Government are clearly trying to do is the fact that they're trying to put the person back into the actual centre of it, and not, pigeonholing that person as, the DWP would like to do, just as a statistic.
Thank you very much. Moving on then, John Nicholson condemns proposals to privatise Channel 4 as a direct attack on journalism. An SNP MP has criticised the UK government's proposals to privatise Channel 4 as a direct attack on journalism. Speaking in the House of Commons today, the SNP's Shadow Culture and Media Secretary John Nicholson urged the UK government to reconsider their Channel 4 privatisation plans, saying that we cannot afford to lose a second of factual reporting in the dangerous times in which we live. Channel 4, which was founded in 1982 to deliver underserved audiences, is owned by the UK government and receives its funding from advertising, not taxpayers' money. Commenting, the SNP's Shadow Culture and Media Secretary John Nicholson said, the UK government's proposal to privatise Channel 4 is a direct attack on an innovative broadcaster which produces independent, high-quality journalism. For years, Channel 4 has been a trailblazer for high-quality reporting as well as a champion for women, BAME and LGBT people, as well as those living with disabilities. The UK government is seeking to put one of our best and most diverse public service broadcasters at risk through a threatened, albeit sleekly planned, privatisation. We cannot afford to lose a second of factual reporting in the dangerous times in which we live. It's nice to hear the word sleekly being used in Parliament, isn't it? But yeah, this is something which we've reported on a couple of times here, the privatisation of Channel 4. Came as a bit of surprise to me, I have to say, because Channel 4, as I said, is not funded by the public. It's funded by advertisers, and it was thought up during the Thatcher years.
Yep.
So it's not exactly, some sort of left-wing bastion of socialist reporting, is it? It's simply
no, it's
factual.
not. But throughout the years, it was seen as a radical alternative to the mainstream channels that we had at that moment in time, which BBC One, BBC Two, and ITV. My good friend Hardeep Singh Kohli was one of the original sort of like founding producers on Channel 4. It was cutting edge, and it did have a kind of like left wing sort of like faction within it. I mean, some of the presenters were overtly left wing, and it allowed them to do things more off the cuff, to appeal to a younger demographic of audience. I'm thinking earlier on there was the music show The Tube with Jules Hollands and Bob Geldof's ex-wife Paula Yates, and it was seen as like something new and something relative to the viewers watching it, 18 to 30. And again, John's quite right. Channel 4 reporting as that and France 24, and there's a few others in Europe as my sort of like get go, for where I get my news service, as well as Broadcasting Scotland, obviously. And Independence Live as well. So, the need to keep broadcasting in Britain as autonomous from Westminster is, at the driving force of this. Because what I get a sense of is the fact that, that the Westminster government want to have more say in the Channel 4's content and its output, and how critical that Channel 4 has been in the past. You only need to look at the programme dispatches, where it does sort of like full hour investigative journalism into some of the disablement issues, some of the migrant issues. as well as obviously unearthing, the likes of, dare I say, Tory sleaze and all the rest of it. They're not afraid to actually attack subjects from, a different perspective. That different perspective, obviously, being from the sort of like cotton wool approach that the BBC offers the Tory government. What we've seen in recent weeks.
Is broadcasting changing then, do you think, over the past few years? Has it gone from being relatively impartial to less impartial than it was?
I think I don't actually include Channel 4, although they are mainstream. But yes, I would say, the likes of the BBC and the ITV News, I can see it very much sanitised. And Channel 4, are always daring to, step over the line, in order to actually, bring the real news. And what I suspect, even harken back to the Dominic Cummings interview last night, which I watched earlier on today, is the fact that, his overwhelming sense of the fact that he wanted to radically reshake and reshuffle not just the establishment but also Whitehall itself. He actually referred to the Daily Telegraph as being Boris Johnson's boss, effectively. Boris Johnson even joked the fact that the Telegraph was his boss. If you actually watch that whole episode. So, from that point of view, when you've got the media running the state, you are really in some serious dark territory there.
Did this not arguably happen as well in the Blairite years? Under Tony Blair, he was listening to Rupert Murdoch, many would say.
Yeah.
So was that not happening the same then, just with different publications?
Yeah, BBC, and this has always been my quandary, especially about, and I hate to go off piste here, but about Jeremy Corbyn, is the fact that, before Jeremy Corbyn became the Labour leader, he was always fighting, he was always seen to be fighting against the establishment, yet he dearly wanted to be part of the establishment and would quite happily settle into all those earlier things that we discussed, about the niceties of the House of Commons and the way that things are done, and the following the protocols and stuff like that, and all the rest of it. And that's why the likes of the SNP MPs will never take a peerage in the House of Lords, because they quite clearly they don't believe in that unelected, undemocratic body having the final say on things. So in some regards, I actually quite like Dominic Cummings, the way that he was saying, that he wanted to radically blow apart the actual establishment. Because 9 times out of 10, an awful lot of people maybe fail to realise the fact that not only is Scotland fighting the Tories, and maybe shooing away the Scottish Labour Party, but the fact that we're actually fighting the establishment, and that is at the centre of this whole unequal society, is the actual establishment, the London establishment, the Westminster elites, who have got the fingers in the pies of, the likes of journalism, the likes of broadcasting, the likes of building controls, all the rest of it. They monopolise everything, and they are the ones that actually call the shots.
Yeah. To international news now then. Emmanuel Macron has been targeted in Project Pegasus spyware case. French daily Le Monde is reporting that the phone of French President Emmanuel Macron was on a list of potential targets for potential surveillance on behalf of Morocco in the Pegasus spyware case. The French presidency said that if the revelations about Macron's phone were true, they would be very serious. The authorities would investigate them to shed all necessary light on the reports, it said. Le Monde also said that according to sources, one of Macron's phone numbers, which he had used regularly since 2017, is on the list of numbers selected by Morocco's intelligence service for potential cyber spying. Morocco had issued a statement on Monday denying any involvement in using Pegasus and rejecting what it called unfounded and false allegations. Moroccan officials could not immediately be reached for comment on the report about Macron on Tuesday. Former French Prime Minister Edouard Philippe and 14 ministers had also been targeted in 2019, Le Monde said. Chris, why would the government of Morocco want to spy on French politicians?
It's a good question. Because they're scared. I really don't know why the Moroccan government would want to do it. I would understand why. Well, I maybe not understand, but it could be believed that several governments have used Pegasus in order to spy on, not just governments but individuals and stuff like that as well. It's what we've seen, with regards President Macron. And I think you said 17, 18 different members of state. So,
14 ministers had been targeted,
14,
plus Macron.
Yeah.
So,
it's...
And 17 media organisations published this.
Yeah. It's not similar to what we were talking about, but it is, in a kind of like a grander scale, because people want to know everything about everybody, and that ends up, as we were talking off air before the programme started, about covert surveillance and stuff like that, the use of secret microphones, secret cameras, drones, all the rest of it. The mind boggles if one country feels it's so insecure that it has to use this platform in order to spy on people who, they maybe don't trust or see as a threat. Or I really couldn't explain as to why.
Yeah. The company who created Pegasus NSO, they say that it's only supposed to be used to target people they suspect of terrorism. Is that the case, though?
No.
No.
Quite clearly it's not, because the Pegasus has been highly used in Israel and Palestine. It was the Israeli state brought Pegasus to the fore because they said that it would be a vital tool in order to keep an eye on dissident Palestinians, who were maybe seen to be coercing and some sort of uprising or demonstrations, whatnot, and what have you. But they've also used it on their own citizens as well, who are sympathetic to the Palestinian cause. So do you
know that for a fact?
It has been reported on a few news channels that I use, such as Al Jazeera and Mendoza, stuff like that. They have alluded to that. I haven't seen concrete evidence in that, but I'm merely just talking about stories that I have read coming out of those media platforms. But you would have to wonder as to why then Israel, in their recent attacks on Palestine, would actually bomb the media centre. Who was in somebody? I think it was Al Jazeera.
I think it was actually.
So to target the media centre in order to blacken it out. Why would they do that? And what it seems to me is that states are using this because they are, kind of insecure in themselves, and they're sort of like eyes everywhere. Who are they, and and what are they saying and stuff like that. So again, I couldn't answer as to why Morocco would possibly use it. Morocco having quite close links with France, throughout, since the Second World War. Obviously, there's a large demographic of Moroccans that actually live in France, and we see quite an awful lot of but some of the refugees that have ended up in the likes of Calais and Dunkirk, they have got Moroccan roots. They've got Moroccan family, and that's been a driving force as to why they've migrated over to France in order to try and be repatriated with their actual families.
Yeah. Moving on then, UNESCO has stripped Liverpool of its World Heritage status. Liverpool has been stripped of its coveted World Heritage status after UNESCO blamed years of development for an irreversible loss to the historic value of its Victorian docks. The UN's heritage body concluded at a meeting in China today that the outstanding universal value of Liverpool's waterfront have been destroyed by new buildings, including Everton Football Club's new £500 million stadium. The decision is a humiliating blow for the city and gives Liverpool the ignominious distinction of being only the third place to lose its status in nearly 50 years. The other delisted sites were Oman's Arabian Oryx Sanctuary in 2007 and the Dresden Elbe Valley in Germany in 2009. Liverpool has enjoyed World Heritage status since 2004, placing it alongside the Taj Mahal and Great Wall of China, as recognition for its role as a major trading power during the British Empire and the architectural beauty of its waterfront. The label gives historic sites access to UN conservation funding and protection under the Geneva Conventions in the event of war, as well as featuring in tourist guidebooks across the world. The threat to being delisted was hung over Liverpool since 2012, as UNESCO warned that development had significantly changed the city's skyline and was destroying the heritage value of its waterfront. Is this something that's accurate, do you think? Do you think they've done the right thing in saying that the Victorian docks are eroding, therefore we're going to take this away?
No. Look, as a committed Liverpool supporter, I'm in full solidarity with Everton here because the development of the Everton's new stadium at the waterfront, is on track to sustain 12,000 jobs over the period of 3 years of construction. I think it was something in the region of 3,000 jobs in its actual operation. Going forward, I've had a look at the photographs, the projected elevation, and it looks an absolute beautiful stadium. And the Liverpool docks, for them to say that, the actual where they filmed this morning's programme for Granada TV, stuff like that. That is a visitor centre in itself. You can wander about that. There are shops and whatnot, what have you, and the buildings have not been altered in any such way, shape, or form. They have been sandblasted and they've been brought back to their former glory. A lot of the doors are painted bright red and stuff like that. And it is an absolute delight. As an ex-constituent of Liverpool, I've stayed in Liverpool for a long time. It's a beautiful, beautiful city. And the transformation that Liverpool has seen, I think, as, again, I'll use the word transformational, but it was the last city of the empire to actually get any investment into it.
Right.
There are a lot of unused warehouses that have, just fallen to rack and ruin. And that's through a lack of investment by the UK government. Again, I have to point out, but to take away this unique status. To a city that is actually emerging out of the ashes.
Yeah.
I've seen a radical transformation in 25 years of Liverpool docklands and stuff like that, and it is honestly, it's a fantastic place to visit. Yeah. It's a full weekend. I would highly recommend people go.
Regardless of its role in the British Empire, the fact that it was such a cultural hub and had such a cultural impact, particularly, of course, in the 1960s with the pop music revolution, with the Beatles, Jerry and the Pacemakers, etc.
Yeah.
Does that not add to the case that it has some sort of cultural value that should be recognised as well?
Well, no, again, notwithstanding that, the likes of some of the roads, one of the most famous roads in Liverpool is Scotty Road, what the Liverpudlians call it. It's actually Scotland Road. And some of those houses, have been transformed back into their former glory as well. So I mean, it's not the likes of it's not like Liverpool City Council have just done a Grenfell, where they've just put cladding all over things in order, in order to make it look good, in order to, make a purse out of a sow's ear. They have actually, raised things to the ground and constructed, and created quite a beautiful city now, an attractive city to actually go and visit. And the actual vistas when you're walking around the docks, because the docks are huge.
Yeah,
they are absolutely huge. My eldest son, a couple of years ago when Liverpool won the Champions League, we went down and spent the full day on the dock side, because they'd done the presentation there and whatnot and what have you. It's just a lovely, lovely place to be.
Yeah. Is there any chance that we could see something similar at some point happening here to Edinburgh? There's people who think that perhaps Edinburgh is also under threat of losing its UNESCO heritage status. Is that possible?
It is, and I'm really hoping that this again is not seen as an act of retribution for the UK government disassociating itself from Europe and all the rest of it. I would hate to think that this is some sort of backlash, in
think
some
it could be?
shape or form. It could be seen as that. But again, it just seems really unjust when a city is putting money into development, in order to enhance the skyline. Then what's not to like, and it just it really just smacks of injustice, and the people of Liverpool will be really, really upset about this.
I'm sure that they will. Yeah. And finally, then, increased funding to tackle fuel poverty and climate change has been released by the Scottish Government. A programme to tackle fuel poverty and improve energy efficiency will receive an extra £9 million of funding this year to support a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions and help fuel-poor households save money on their heating bills. The Scottish Government's Area-Based Scheme (ABS) programme will provide over £64 million in 2021 to 22, up from £55 million the year before, to enable every local authority in Scotland to deliver energy efficiency measures to fuel-poor households and communities. The work forms part of a £1.6 billion investment over the next 5 years to transform the heat and energy efficiency of buildings. This is something that's been long needed, isn't it? And the Scottish Government are now upping the money that's going to go to local councils.
Yeah.
Does the cut have to come somewhere else when they do that?
No, I don't think it should. It might sound critical of the Scottish Government, the controlling party, obviously the SNP, but they've long spoke about the need to devolve local issues down to local government. And it's, for local government to take those decisions as to where the money is best spent. And obviously, as long as it sticks to the fact that local government will invest in tackling fuel poverty, they will, try and do their bit to offset climate change, then what's not to like, and it should be welcomed, the fact that the Scottish Government are putting extra money into it, because it shows a real commitment going forward that the Scottish Government are willing to tackle, some of the more underrated things that they have come out of the Scottish Government with a view to climate change and green policies.
Yeah, of course, the local government elections are due to take place next year in May. Well, thank you very much for that, Chris. And we have come towards the end of our programme. Thank you for joining us. We can only do what we do here at Broadcasting Scotland thanks to your generous support and your contributions. So please, if you can, then please consider signing up on the website or donating a little to our crowdfunder to help us do the work that we do here that is not beholden to any government or corporate sponsors.
Yeah, well said.
Thank you very much and good night.